All Access Pete's Preseason is brought to you by these sponsors.
As we visit with area high school football coaches, we're getting to know Robert Mustar, the head coach of the Powdersville Patriots, and his program, and decade and a half old, and already they've played for a state title. Over the past 3 seasons alone, they've won nearly 35 games. Right out of the gate, after a few years of building up a football program, they were in double figures in wins, and what a job he has done. Coach, welcome aboard. About a decade and a half ago, I guess you were on the staff at Wren, which is in the same district as Powdersville, and suddenly you got word there was a new high school about to come online in your district. They were going to have a football program, so kind of give me the foundation from there as to how it all came together for you in Powdersville.
Oh man, Pete, you're really jogging my memory. It seems like 5 years ago we opened up. Sometimes it seems like 20, and I tell people that all the time. I'm a broken record, but I mean, I can remember being at Wren not too long ago. That's where I went to school. That's where I played football, baseball. Had a lot of great pride in that place. Coached under what I thought were 2 great men, Coach Mickey Moss. Coach Moss's last year at Wren was my first year there, so I only got to spend 1 season with him. Then Coach Jeff Tate came in after him. I got to spend 3 seasons with him. And I can remember sitting in Coach Tate's office after we had just lost to James Island in the first round of the playoffs, and I can't remember what year it was. And he had talked to me, he said, there might be some interest in you, going and talking to some people about the Powdersville job. And it really had not crossed my mind at that point in time. All my eggs were in one basket. That was Wren High School. I was more than glad to be an assistant coach. Of course, I had goals of one day moving up the ladder, but I was just all in and with what I was doing at Wren High School at the time. And, we were able to make some leaps and bounds over there. And I'm not saying I had a whole lot to do with it, but I saw the blueprint of how to do it, and I paid attention. And that's kind of what we brought with us over here.
Just to take you back in your coaching past, you were a baseball player at the Citadel, and you eventually got into football coaching. So how did all that come about?
Oh, man, I played baseball and football growing up, and in high school did the same. And in college, I actually, I went on a very small scholarship to Clemson University. Enjoyed it. I redshirted. I found out quick I was probably a big fish in a small pond up here in the upstate. And although, I felt like I was a very good player when I got there, you got to understand they can get the best, anywhere in the country. And that program, I've got so much respect for that program. And it just kind of dawned on me, if what I want to do later in life, because baseball's probably not going to be, it probably ain't going to last forever, then what do I want to do? And I was taking parks and recreation classes there. I love game wardens. I really had no desire to be one. I was kind of just taking that to be able to continue playing baseball. And I always had a desire to coach and teach, but I didn't want to be in the classroom. I wanted to be in a gym or a weight room. I want to be a PE teacher. And Clemson, to my knowledge, still to this day, does not offer that.
Yeah.
So I ended up transferring and going to the Citadel. Actually, I played in a summer league between Clemson and the Citadel, injured my arm, and did not play anymore. I was on the team, probably relegated to, if I made it to the season, pinch hitting, having some DH opportunities maybe, but I didn't even make it that far. It got to the point I was like, am I going to continue doing this, or am I going to bounce around school to school? And I was like, I like this place. I needed the discipline in my life. I can promise you that. Mm-hmm. And it was a good thing for me. So I decided to stay there and go to school there.
And so you eventually then got into coaching. So you're at Wren. You have the conversation with the district about the Powdersville job. The launch point was, correct me if I'm wrong, 2012 was the first season for varsity.
That should have been our first varsity season.
Yeah, first varsity season.
We were open a year before that, and we had a full 9th grade class, half of a 10th grade class. We only had a JV team that year, and that's where it all started. And I think about that group often. and think of how, they had to have some guts to get something started. And, we had a good group of athletes, but then we also had sprinkled in there, just like today. I mean, a bunch of kids that just want to be a part of something, but we were kind of testing the waters. We were the unknown. Our kids really didn't know, I didn't know how they were going to be able to act to adversity. I had to get to know them. They had to get to know me. We put a blueprint out there. We stuck with it, and we're still pretty much doing the same thing to this day.
So how, once you got the job as the head coach, and so you knew the first varsity season was probably a couple of years off, how do you put together a program from scratch? A recent example, I guess, would be Fountain Inn, but they started with only freshmen and sophomores, and then those kids progressively grew until they had a senior class last year for the first time. But what about you with Powdersville? What was it like getting that blueprint put together and then getting things in place? You knew you had the kids, but a lot of other things had to happen.
Yeah, so, might be more information than what you want, but, you did ask about my time at Wren, and I gave you a very brief description of that. But our kids, if you were zoned to go to Powdersville, then you were going to be able to go to Powdersville. If you were a ninth grader the year before we opened and you were at Wren, but you were zoned to go to Powdersville, you could stay at Wren or you could come over to Powdersville. And I would say, it's been so long ago, I'm going to mess this up, but I'm going to say, we might have got about half the number of kids that could have come over here from Wren.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and you got to think, if you're an established athlete at that time at Wren, why would you leave their program?
Sure.
And, but we had a few, and I know specifically for football, we had 7 kids that were sophomores that year, and that was our oldest group. 7 kids, that's it. And then we had a full 9th grade class, but you think, okay, we only have a JV season that first year, and we had a very good JV season because we could put all of our eggs in that one basket.
Yeah.
And, we didn't have, we weren't thinking about varsity. Our baby that year was the foundation of what we've got now. And that was a JV team. And we knew if those kids were going to stick with it, that yes, they would be playing for us on Friday nights one day. And, we just stuck with our gut, and we did what we did, and we built, and it was tough that first year. We were that first varsity season. I told you we had success the first JV season. I think we might have been maybe 6-4, maybe, but we won 6 games, and that was big because I can remember we're going to Crescent High School, and that was the first time we won in anything in athletics, and that was a JV football game. And you start remembering those milestone wins, and it was tough. It was tough. I can remember we're playing Palmetto, and we've got a 21-0 lead, and all of a sudden that starts slipping away. At halftime, we're trying to make adjustments. Our kids kind of were in panic, and I don't know if they ever had to make adjustments before. Us as a brand new coaching staff, we're trying to figure things out. I think we're caught up in a moment too, and next thing you know, we lose by 6, 7, something like that. I mean, it was 1 score. And then we go over to Berea the next week and we lose a nail biter. And then it was much the same throughout the entire year. And then you end up, you're 0-10. And, you're like, man, this is going to be a process. And you're going to have to trust that process and be patient, which I'm not the most patient of people. But then the following year, we opened up against Palmetto at home, and that was our first win. So you start season 1-0, and that year we made the playoffs, and we had a long string of making the playoffs. And then we had a couple bad seasons, 2018, 2019. They weren't real good to us, and we weren't doing anything different. We caught some tough breaks and just didn't have the best of seasons. I think between both seasons combined, we had 4 wins, but then we started bouncing back, and it's just. I would like to say, and this is not a knock on anybody. I mean, I got a lot of respect for public schools, private schools, charter schools. I'm not going to get into all that. Yeah. But, we're a public school, and I would consider us a very traditional public school. We don't get a lot of transfers at all. And when we get one, they who knows, it might be a kid that moved in from Texas, and they just had their family happen to be moving up here. But we, we've done some great things, and there's been some nail biters because we have called a different play here or there, of course. hindsight is 2020, but overall, man, I've enjoyed the ride. I mean, it's been a great thing to be a part of, but I mean, it's, you know, each year is a different year. We're looking forward to the one coming up. And I mean, you are as good as the talent you have. And I think we've got some talent this year.
Mm-hmm.
I also think I'm gonna be repetitive when I say, you know, we've got to stay healthy and we've got to be disciplined.
Sure.
And if we do those things, then I think, you know, we could make maybe a special run at something, but just one game after the other, not getting too far ahead of ourselves.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned the whole transfer thing. The benefit you do have is that because of where you're located in eastern Anderson County, most folks associate your geography there with Greenville because you're so close. Have you noticed that you've been able to get the benefit of folks who move in from out of the area and maybe a parent has a job in Greenville and they would just as soon live there? I've got to think that's a plus going in your direction.
Well, so for us, and I would say like Powdersville, I never knew this until our school physically opened up, and I grew up in this area, but Powdersville is like kind of the Bermuda Triangle up here. I mean, we're you know, not too far from Easley. We're just over, you know, the Saluda River right here, this bridge, which is just a couple miles. You cross over it, you're in the Greenville County. You go down Hood Road right in front of our school, and you go about a quarter mile, you take a left, boom, there's a sign for Pickens County. And then, you know, we are split into 3 schools in Anderson District 1. You've got us, Rand High School, and Palmetto High School. And it's odd because we've got a Greenville County zip code, but we're Anderson County, Anderson District 1 school. But just like everywhere else, I mean, if you're zoned to go to us, you can come here. If not, you know, it's a tough task. Yeah.
Well, and you also wear the hat of athletic director. I know that presents its challenges as well, but you've done an amazing job there. And again, you have the distinction of being the only head coach in Powdersville history. I mentioned you've played for a state title. You had a great collection of guys. Right after you ran through that rough patch late last decade, you put together a group that was featured by your quarterback, Eli Hudgens, and a great running back, Thomas Williams, who's now at Virginia Tech. Been a great run for you, Coach. Thanks so much for joining us. Best of luck to you in the season ahead. And again, a team that last year bookended a couple of losses around a 9-game winning streak, but with your quarterback back and some other key players, I know it's going to be great this year. So good luck in this season ahead.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All Access Pete's Preseason is brought to you by these sponsors.
High school football in our area is essentially underway with all the preseason work going on leading up to week 0 coming up on Friday, August 22nd. And by the way, as you probably noticed on 7 News or on WSPA.com, we're previewing more than 50 area teams. And if you don't catch the airings on the news, we've got our hour-long High School Red Zone season preview show on Saturday, August 16th. At 7 p.m. on Channel 7, so if you're in the viewing area, we invite you to tune in for that. We'll also replay that show a few days after that on the CW62, so check local listings. Well, in talking to various high school coaches, we welcome in a guy who has been successful at every stop he's been in the upstate area, and now at his 4th school trying to turn around the Laurens Raiders. That would be head coach Greg Porter. Coach, it began at Southside a couple of decades ago. You had a 7-win season there, which was quite an achievement. They hadn't had a whole lot of success in recent years. Then you head to Hillcrest and built them into a state championship team, and that's not a phrase you throw around lightly because you were the first team not called Greer, first Greenville County public high school since J.L. Mann in 1984 to let alone make a playoff, a state championship game, and then go win it. And again, that excludes Greer, which had been there a few times and won state titles. So that was an accomplishment. Then you go to Greenville and you bring them their best seasons in 100 years when you were able to get to the double-figure win mark. And in fact, you had 3 straight 10-win seasons there. And now at Laurens, getting ready for year number 2, and I know you're working hard at that. But let's focus on your journey as a coach. And I think you grew up in the D.C. area, as you once told me, but kind of tell me about your early days growing up playing football, and then what inspired you to eventually get into the profession.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me on the show. I appreciate all what you do for the community of football, Mr. Andy. I did grow up in Washington, D.C., played football. In the beginning, I was a little undersized. And I think what happened is I was overlooked by the neighborhood guys when they was picking teams. And it sort of put a fire in me at a young age that I'm not going to allow anyone to tell me what I can and cannot do. So I went and had the opportunity to go into coaching, but I played high school football and went on and played at a Division II school in Nebraska.
Oh.
And things just took off from there. Make a long story short, I get an opportunity to be a coach in Virginia Beach, and my path went to Jacksonville, Florida, came back to South Carolina, and on the journey, I've learned different strategies from different people, and I was able to make it mine. But I do have to say, Coach, call you Coach Mr. Yanity.
I feel like a coach sometimes.
I didn't do it by myself. I have to admit, I was surrounded with some really great coaches that played a major part in helping me develop the young men. So I may get the credit, but behind the scenes, I know who were the young men, the coaches that helped me build these programs. And oftentimes when I don't have them with me, I always see the difference because we just have a blueprint of how we go about things and helping young men develop.
Sure. What was the D2 school in Nebraska where you played?
Midland Lutheran University.
Gotcha.
It was a little small school. They gave me a chance from Washington, D.C. I told my mom I'm going to college next week. She said, no, you're not. The next Tuesday came, I flew out to Nebraska, and I stayed out there for 4 years. Step of faith, but the coach believed in something he saw in me, and that made all the difference in the world is when a coach inspires you. And I think that what sort of got me into coaching because I had good mentors. Yeah,
was that in the Grand Island, Kearney, Hastings area, or was it back toward Omaha, or where was it in Nebraska?
Oh, man, just that was between Omaha and Lincoln.
Okay.
So we was a little closer to Omaha. Fremont is a little closer to Omaha.
Yeah, right there, Wes. I've been to Omaha a million times, either covering the College World Series or covering an NCAA tournament. So I know Omaha like I know most other cities. And I know where some of the good steakhouses are. And maybe at some point you ate at a place called Cashio's right there in Omaha, right south of town.
Yes, sir.
Oh, man, what a great place. Had many good meals
back
there.
Memories.
But I digress, and I don't want to make either you or me hungry right now. So Virginia Beach, really an unbelievable athletic area. There was a time that they cranked out guys like J.R. Reed and Alonzo Mourning in basketball and Terry Kirby and DJ Dozier in football, just to name a few. What years were you there? What high school were you at when you were there?
I was at Atlantic Shores. It was a private school, not too far from the Rock Church where DJ Dozier was a minister at.
Wow.
And matter of fact, his little sister was in my class.
Oh, wow.
In my science class.
Yeah.
So, I still remember those days. Former Minnesota Viking football player.
Yeah, he was great at Penn State. Yeah, he was great at Penn State. Penn State used to go to Hampton Roads and also come down to South Carolina and get great players in addition to everywhere else they recruited. But that's what I remember. And then down to Jacksonville. Where were you in Jacksonville? Where were you working there?
I was at University Christian.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right off of 95.
Yep, that's had its fair share of athletes as well. And I was the Bowls school. Did you guys play the Bowls school?
Oh, did we? We played the Bowls and Union County.
Yep.
And at that time, Union County had like a 58-game win streak. And the Bowls was just something I have never seen before in my life.
Yeah. You would have coached against Union County before they had a running back named C.J. Spiller, who later came through Union County in Florida. Yeah. So
and Andre Zile was there too, the quarterback, who is an assistant coach at Clemson right now.
Oh, wow. How do you like former Alabama Crimson Tide of the Dabo era? Yeah. Wow. So I remember you first coming and taking the Southside High job. Were you an assistant in the area before you became the head coach at Southside High?
Yes, sir. I was assistant at Wade Hampton, Blue Ridge, and one day I thought I wanted to go to Burns High School.
Yep.
Chris Miller was just becoming the new head coach.
Yep.
Bobby Bentley just became the new head coach at PC.
Yep.
And I really didn't know anyone. And I just decided to stay in Greenville County.
Mm-hmm.
And by that time, the Dr. Pete gave me an option. You go to Berea or Southside. And I just randomly said Southside.
Yeah.
Berea was actually closer to my home, but I didn't know. I just said,
Sure.
I go to Southside. And everything just took off from there. You know, after 1 year, I ended up becoming the head coach. Started off as an intern during the off season under the late Louis Golden, gave me the opportunity to be the first head coach in this area.
Yeah.
And pay homage to him for what he's done and invested in me and just telling me always focus on fundamentals and not the 7-on-7s.
Yeah.
So that was his goal.
Yeah, it's funny just mentioning Louis Golden, who folks remember as a 3-time state champion at Riverside, but took his Riverside basketball teams to 6 straight title games. Then he won at least 1 title at Southside. They played for him. But the thing I'll always remember about Louis Golden, not only as a coach, I got up here in his last 10 or 15 years of coaching. I got to Channel 7 for that. But I remember post-retirement, he was one of the greatest high school sports fans I've ever been around in my life. Every event we go to, playoff event, whether it was at Christ Church or one of the schools he's coached at, I'd always see him either at a basketball game, a soccer game. So he was a great guy who championed high school sports. But so quickly back to your journey. Speaking of Burns High, I'll never forget in your second year at Southside, I think it was, you suddenly show up as one of the teams at this very high level 7-on-7. And that, I thought, spoke to the fact of your tenacity of like, look, I know Southside hasn't been in the conversation with some of these other schools in the area, but I'm going to go and get it done. And that's why I think you fit so well at Laurens. They've had some good teams over the years and have had some success at Laurens. And they won a state title back about 30-plus years ago. But I think your tenacity is perfect for that program because that's what's needed there right now, isn't it?
I'm being careful how I say it. Okay. Yes, it's needed. 2013, I had an interest in this position. I can't even tell you why. I just felt like with a little push that this program could be something to deal with. There are different challenges that this area is dealing with, whether it's, whether it's gang violence, vaping, we deal with everything that everybody else is dealing with. But that's the challenge of trying to mentor young men to bring them to a place where, give it everything you have every day, take one day at a time. Let's get better. I was intrigued with that challenge and the kids are responding, It was a little disappointing last year, but last year was tough, not only on the field, but it was, tough for me health-wise, It was a difficult year for me as well. So I hate that senior class had to experience such a disappointing season. But this group and this returning class of young men, we definitely have to use this as motivation to want to put a better product on the field so our fan base can be proud, our student body, our administration, our school. And it takes work. It takes work.
Yep.
And that's what we're trying to model for these young men.
So back to the Hillcrest run, because that was pretty remarkable. You'd had success at Southside, better success than they'd had. But to get a team that had, in a good year, Hillcrest would win 6 to 8 games. But you were able to put together a team. You had a quarterback named Colin Sneed. You had some really good talent around him. What were the keys of getting to where you not only got to a state title game, but actually won one? Because, again, the only other public school that had done it in a 30-year window was Greer in terms of Greenville County public schools.
That team was legendary. We had a group of kids that believed that they wanted to do something special. Coaches, Coach Lamb in the weight room did a tremendous job in the weight room with the kids. And that was one of the first things that began to change with the guys was the coaches. Coach Hayward was our track coach, so we knew we had kids running track. So we knew we had them in the weight room. Then we just had a community that come together, make sure kids come to school, get to school. We started putting out a product where people want to come to Hillcrest. And it just took work. The administration, the late Mr. Chamness just buying into the philosophy. Tommy Bell, the athletic director, they kept a tight ship on me. If I was out of place, they checked me and made sure I tried to do it the right way. And it was a learning process on the way, but we just had a group of kids that came through that wanted to do something great. I think, it's hard to find that type of group. Obviously, I haven't been back. I think Tommy Knox is the only one I know that can keep doing it over and over again. But it's definitely been a challenge in trying to find another group just like that.
Well, I just remember I made it a point before we headed across the state on Thanksgiving Day that year to go see family. I did a story on the fact that Hillcrest was practicing on Thanksgiving Day. I think that was the first time in program history. And I know it had to be a point of pride because, again, you also got to a mountain. You never got to a state title game at Greenville, but Greenville had some success. They'd had 8 and 9 win seasons. But I always thought that Hillcrest job really kind of spoke volumes about your ability to get a program to the next level. And I wanted to make sure we talked about that. Coach, great to talk to you as always. I know that right now you're looking at uphill battle, but Laurens has great kids. They've always had a bunch of really great athletes. Guy who played quarterback about a decade and a half ago there, later played at South Carolina, Seth Strickland, is now the offensive coordinator down at Charleston Southern. I didn't realize that, but I think that's the new role. So I just think you got players like that who are looking back on Laurens with pride. The late Charles Peterson was a first-round baseball draft pick out of Laurens. He led the Raiders to a state title in 1991. But another guy is in professional baseball, Thomas Jones, he may still be. But you've had great athletes come through there. I know that you're going to be able to circle the wagons, get it going. But thanks so much for joining us, and the best of luck this season as you continue to grow things at Laurens.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.